don't feel pressure to figure it out too quickly. I think there's a lot of things to try, and you should look for the thing that doesn't feel square peg, round hole, the thing that feels like it suits you.
Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Bar podcast. I'm your host, Anisa Tova. And today I really am thrilled. Sometimes I say it, but today I'm really, really thrilled to have Sarah Hechtman here with me. She's a highly experienced family lawyer and a partner with a law firm called Rower LLC based in New York City. She is definitely a compassionate advocate for her clients. More intriguingly, though, someone who has taken a very interesting path to the law. And she has a unique mix of litigation, mediation, collaborative law, and even fertility law under her belt. She really is the epitome of multifaceted legal professional, but there's so much more to her than just being a legal trailblazer, and I cannot wait to dive in. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So before we dive into the good stuff, being the shows and the movies, of course, I am intrigued. You know, we chatted here and there about your story, and I want to know more. So you started off with a major, and if I get it wrong, then obviously correct me, but I think you started off with a major in psychology and you considered pursuing a career in that field before turning to law. What was that critical moment that had you take that different path?
Oh, I don't think there was a critical moment. I think
Or moment.
I think to this very minute, as I sit here today, I wonder, about the path not taken. So I don't know that I was. I don't know that. I guess some people are blessed with knowing exactly what path they need to take, and others of us just keep trying to figure it out as we go. So I feel like I landed in a very good spot. I'm very happy with where I am, but I don't think that there was anything critical about the choice. There was a stack of like grad school applications and a stack of law school applications, and probably I was just a little bit chicken about doing a doctorate. It seemed a little bit more, I don't know, overwhelming or uncertain than getting a law degree.
What were you like in middle school?
In middle school, yeah, not my finest hour, middle school. Um, Pretty nerdy, not particularly confident. And, it wasn't until high school even that I figured out that I was smart. Like it took a while to even figure out that I was nerdy and could also achieve something academically. So middle school, I mean, I was nothing special.
When you say it was not until high school when you figured out you were smart and could achieve something, do you think it was particular teachers or teacher? Was there a mentor, or did you sort of develop this self-awareness? Because many times kids in high school, they're trying to figure out who they are and find sort of their place in the world, and just almost trying to suppress the being smart, and the focus seems to be more on fitting in and belonging.
For sure. And I had actually I know a lot of people talk about high school like it was a terrible time of their life. I actually had a wonderful time in high school. I went to a really big public high school out in the middle of Brooklyn. It was a magnet school, so it drew kids from all over the borough of Brooklyn. And it was really like probably the most diverse, like truly the most diverse place I've ever, lived, existed. Um, and I feel like I got to be both nerdy and smart and also accepted and social. And I had a really great group of friends, many of whom I'm still in touch with. So for me, it was a very positive experience. And yes, there were definitely mentors along the way. There were some really special, amazing teachers there.
That is, it just when you describe that, I mean, that truly makes me I'm in awe because I've had many conversations about just sort of just people feeling socially awkward, and it was not until even after college for many young adults really kind of trying to figure out, where they wanted to place themselves. But so anyway, so then many years forward, so you land in a legal field. And so tell me about, how do you choose this particular field that you are in within the law? What's attracting you to it?
So, it's a little, I guess the theme of my life is not knowing what I'm doing because kind of like I didn't know what kind of graduate school I wanted to go to. I didn't know what kind of law I wanted to practice or even if I wanted to practice law. So I spent a lot of time jumping around and trying different things out. I was at a big
Hmm.
law firm. I was a local prosecutor. I did some children's rights work. The theme, though, that I think has sort of that has traversed my path is being interested in families and children and women's issues. So, and psychology and psychological issues. And so that kind of naturally lends itself to practicing family law. And so after I had done all these various stints, um, at the Manhattan DA's office and at a big Manhattan law firm and that kind of thing, when I got pregnant with my first child, I started to look around for something a little bit different to do because I've been a litigator, and anybody who's been in active litigation knows it doesn't go very well with having a new baby. So I literally got a postcard in the mail. It was an advertisement for a mediation training. And I
Wow.
thought, oh, well, this combines law and psychology kind of counseling. And so I did this mediation training, and thus was born a career in family law because I tried mediating, then I realized that I wasn't really going to be able to create a, a significant mediation practice without getting some experience. I went to work with um, probably someone you've even interviewed, or if you haven't, you ought to, Teresa Ombres. So shout out to Teresa, who's really responsible in some ways for my having a career in family law because she hired me when I had no experience because I learned to mediate from her, and I helped her with some court involved cases because that was something I knew how to do from my litigation background. And then I sort of, have wound my way through various other iterations of being a family lawyer and find myself now with, I don't know, nearly 20 years of experience doing that.
Here you are doing that. That's not that's a challenge in itself. Going from being a litigator to being a mediator, and essentially in mediation, now you're dealing with a couple, with two people who they have their, certainly that it's emotionally laden typically. What is it that you've learned about yourself through that process, or maybe had to grow through, right? When you're sitting there and noticing a shift in energy within yourself, and you probably learned that during your litigation um, years. What is it that you had to grow through, would you say?
I think I have learned to be very comfortable in other people's discomfort. Like, I think that I mean, this probably happens to everybody really as they grow up, right? Is that the things like somebody crying, somebody getting emotional, a couple fighting in front of me, like I'm able to maintain distance now in a way that I probably couldn't have when I first started learning about being a mediator. That said, I think I've always been a natural mediator, and the litigation always felt a little square peg, round hole to me.
Yeah,
Like taking a
yeah.
position, being really vociferous about it, being, getting assertive, arguing your side when I can always see all sides. So there's always been something that felt disingenuous about taking on one side and arguing it and only it, and something much more comfortable for me in seeing all sides of the story and trying to somehow convey. I mean, that's what you're doing as a mediator. You're conveying each person's perspective to the other, just sort of through you as a conduit. Or that's not all of it, but that's a lot of it.
That sounds challenging.
I don't think it's as challenging as walking into a courtroom and screaming and hollering at that your adversary is lying or misrepresenting the facts or twisting something. Much easier for me to sit in a room and be curious about what people are experiencing than to
See,
do the fight.
that's right here, though, what you're saying. And that's just my own perspective. To me, it's almost easier to scream it out, right? What's the art in doing that? And I see the difference in professionals who have a need to do that, right? You take on their clients' emotions, you scream it out, but you resolve nothing. Whereas you have two people, and I think as human beings, we get naturally uncomfortable when we well, even in our own discomfort, right? Many people, they resort to the numbing and, I don't want to deal with pain, and certainly somebody else arguing in front of me. So as a mediator, it is unfolding in front of you, and you, like you said, have to truly maintain distance. I'm sure you're noticing shift in energies. To me, it's almost a more challenging, it's a skill not to get sucked into it or become so almost paralyzed and uncomfortable, as opposed to like you split people up, right, in two corners, like two kids. You go there, and you scream it out. So that I find, that's a skill.
Yeah, and it's not that it's not uncomfortable. I mean, it can be obviously very uncomfortable to be witness to that kind of conflict. But I mean, I guess that is the most challenging thing, is somehow being able to take the conflict and translate it into something that can potentially be productive. It doesn't always work, by the way, but to the extent there's any chance of two people who are embroiled in conflict to understand one another, I think it is really helpful to have like a third person through whom um, their perspective is channeled, right? It's just
Yeah.
that's what reframing is. You're taking somebody's perspective and you're saying, okay, so if what I hear you saying is, and then you turn to the other person and say, now, did that make it any clearer to you what it is that he or she is trying to communicate? And hopefully the answer is yes. We hope.
Hopefully, yeah. Yeah, I think
Hopefully.
you shared with hopefully, right. I think you shared with me that you're always a bit restless. I mean, you have so many different dimensions to you. Um, where does that where does that come from?
I'm not sure that I could tell you. I don't know that it comes from anywhere. I mean, I guess it's interesting because you say that like it's a strength, whereas I think of it as a weakness, right?
How so?
Like I mean, like someone who really knows what they're doing, and they go to law school because they've always known they want to be a lawyer, and they go and they work in mergers and acquisitions because they've always known that's what they want to do. To me, that's amazing. Like that's really cool that somebody could really know that that's what they want to do and that's their path. Whereas I feel like I know that, I'm good at some things, I'm not as good at other things, I'm really bad at other things. And I've found myself a place, I think, in my profession where I'm mostly doing things I'm good at and mostly doing things that I enjoy doing. But it's taken a lot of years to get there. So,
Mostly,
I don't know where it comes from.
why I'm having this conversation, and the beauty of this podcast, especially with someone like you, and you can handle it. You you love it's such a pleasure chatting with you, and it's not like we have done a lot of that. Is what I have learned fairly recently, and I'm listening to Simon Sinek and many others, is kind of knowing your why. But also, if you go back to, that's why I asked you about the middle school or even high school, if you could think about an experience during that time that you think you've sort of filled you up, a particular, whether it was experience, set of experiences, and then you fast forwarded to what you're doing today. And I'm wondering if you're feeling in alignment, if where you arrived or where you are today, because you mostly enjoy what you do, you're obviously very, very good at it. I'm wondering if you're starting to feel that sense of like, oh, I think somewhere there, I think maybe that is what I was meant to do. And this feels I am in alignment, or I am getting there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. Yeah, I mean, I think about like what are the things that I really liked doing when I was in college, and I was a peer counselor, for instance. So there was a like an all night drop in center, and you had to basically audition to do a series of interviews in order to get onto this organization. And then we did a bunch of supervision training with, university mental health professionals. So it was real, right? People were dropping in or calling who were really in crisis. So, and
Mm.
I loved doing it. It was an extracurricular activity, right, while I was in college. Um, so does that mean I should have been a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist? I don't know. But I definitely, when I think about like what are the things that I like about what I do now, and there's similar things. I really enjoy not just the mediation, but the counseling component of being a lawyer. Because the lawyering that like lawyering on the outside, the going to court, putting on a suit, you know, looking like a lawyer, like that's only part of it. Because there's all this stuff that happens with your clients behind the scenes, talking them through, how to handle the divorce proceedings, how to deal with their children, how to deal with their ex-spouse, how to handle, how to think about the legal and the emotional issues that are happening in their lives, whether it's a divorce or a custody battle, or even in the context of other less contentious things like prenuptial agreements. And that's the part that I really like is is being able to explain how the process works, explain what the limits of the law are, because there are a lot of them, particularly in family law, right? So people are concerned about, all sorts of things, some of which the law handles well and some of which it does not. And being able to explain to someone in a way that hopefully will be helpful, not just in the short term, but also over the long term. Like where are the limits to what your contract is going to do for you or some judge, um, and then where can you sort of help yourself by either adjusting your attitude about your former spouse or readjusting your expectations about what joint custody is going to look like, that sort of thing.
See, so much. There is so much in that, not to mention mastering and expertise in all these different disciplines as you are guiding them to divide their assets, right? I mean, so it's ongoing. It's an ongoing universe of just different layers. So what you do is there's just it's a career. It's a career, and it's really admirable. Stepping outside of that, we actually had an interesting discussion about movies. We talked about shows. Was it what you shared with me that your interest in, was it the LA Law you mentioned?
No, Law
Law
and
and Order?
Order.
Law and Order, that's right. Yes, we share that, not the LA Law, the Law and Order, yes. What
Oh,
about
I
that
like
show,
LA Law
actually?
too, but for different reasons.
Yes. Well, I seriously, I love that show. I love it. But what about that show that intrigued you?
About Law and Order.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we were talking about how like there needs to be some element of reality, some modicum. Not it would be very boring to watch real life on television. There has to be drama, obviously. But we're talking about how if a show is really off the rails, in terms of its depiction of something that's meant to mimic reality, it becomes not so compelling. And I think what Law and Order has done incredibly well is dramatizing real life in ways that are believable, even though if you're a lawyer and if you practice criminal law, as I have, you recognize that it's not spot on. Things happen much more quickly and much more dramatically on the show than they do in real life. But the issues that are at the heart of the show are real, and the characters are somewhat believable and very likable. I know you had one of the actors on, right? You had your like one of your celebrity guests is
I
Ice-T,
did,
whom I
yeah.
adore on that
Ice,
show.
yep, Ice-T was on, yes.
Did you
Yes.
talk about the show or did you talk about
We,
other
you know,
things?
we did talk about the show. This was actually at the time, trying to think, this was actually a while back, and yes, Detective Tutoa, yeah, he really, how he became close with people on the set were essentially like a family, and yeah, you put on a different hat, but it's not so different. You really kind of grow with the character and into the character. Yeah, it was really interesting. But yeah, he talked about how really they formed like these deep friendships with the fellow actors and actresses on the set. Yeah, it was a great conversation for sure.
Well, and they've all been
What
working together for what, 20 years or 30? I mean, the show's been on
yeah,
forever. So
long time, I know. I mean, to me, and another actor we had on was Eric Roberts. I don't know if you got into The Suits. Have you ever watched The
no,
Suits? No.
no.
Um, I think I binged it, a couple of rounds of it actually over the years. But and one of my questions was he actually played not particularly attractive character on the show, and so I asked him. Actually, asked his wife, who was also on the podcast, and I said, so would you want, he played I forget his name, I think it's Forrester. I mean, would you want Eric to walk in as a Forrester into the house and act like that? She goes, oh hell no. He was like, no way. You know, it's just like it stops. You don't bring it home, but sometimes you just get into the character. I can't even imagine. I mean, I would imagine you probably like in trials, do you how immersed, I mean, I don't know if you do a lot of litigation, but I mean, how immersed do you get into it?
I don't think it's immersion like being an actor. At least not for me.
Yeah,
Not for me. It's
yeah,
it's it's still you're still just doing a job, even when you're on trial. Even when it's all day, and when it's days in a row. And also it's not dramatic the way it is on television. You don't catch witnesses in lies through cross-examination and then they admit the truth and there's, high drama moments. That's not the usual. Trials are
you
boring.
don't? What?
Not usually. Sorry.
Oh, that is too funny. So what are you into? What else are you into when you're not working?
My kids, I have two teenage boys, so I guess, only so much longer that I'm going to have to say that they're a hobby, because one of them's already in college, the other one's in high school. So I nag
Mm.
them, about their schoolwork and things like that. So that's one of the things I do. I'm a little bit of a fitness nut, so I'm at the gym, I'm playing tennis, I'm hiking, I'm doing stuff like that. I have a dog who does some of those things, not all, some of those things with me. And I try
Just
to
a little
read,
bit.
although I find the older I get, the less I'm able to get through a novel for some reason.
Really? How so?
I'm okay with nonfiction, but there's something about reading fiction that doesn't work as well as it used to.
Hmm. Yeah, I can relate actually. I get very antsy and I feel like not this urge that I must learn, that everything has to be work, but maybe it's just this thirst for knowledge, and I feel like my time on this earth is shrinking and I want to soak up as much as I can, and it's like I
Yeah,
don't
I
have time
wonder if
for this.
I don't know what it has to do with, but it just doesn't feel like but I could binge bad television, and that's, for 3 hours at a time. So it's not so much about not wasting time because I'm perfectly capable of wasting time.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to binge on Housewives like years ago, and especially during flights. I used to do a lot of flying, and now it's like, I'm over it. Now, actually, trying to find a good criminal shows. Um, so that's definitely pulling me in. But let me ask you this: what advice would you give to incoming attorneys?
To what? To junior level attorneys who want to practice family law, or any of them?
Really, any of them.
I mean, I feel like a lot of people go to law school, I think, not knowing what they actually want to be, right? Because unlike something like medical school, where there's a lot required to get in, like you have to have invested a lot of time taking organic chemistry and things like that. A lot of people go to law school as generalists, and there's nothing wrong with that. Um, But I guess I would say, like, don't feel pressure to figure it out too quickly. Of course, that's pretty funny coming from me because it did take me 20 years to land, or 15 years to end up doing the area of law that I have made sort of my adult career. Um, but I don't know that that's so bad. I think there's a lot
Mhm.
of things to try, and you should look for the thing that doesn't feel square peg round hole, the thing that feels like it suits you.
Mm. I think
And
I think that's
alignment,
a
and alignment between what you're good at and what you like. If you can figure that out in any profession, I mean, law or otherwise, I think you're great.
I think that is such a great practical advice because there are so many people lost, graduate college, they don't know what they want to do. The world's changing, the AI technology, it's social media, the new positions, new work environment. It's just not what it used to be. And so there's a lot of pressure. And I have not met, and I've interviewed, well, maybe with the exception of few, and I'm doubtful that that was the exact story and how it happened. I really seldom would meet someone or hear someone who would say, "Yep, had it all figured out, got this degree, and went right into that career." Or if they did, they switched gears. I actually interviewed someone before you, and they said, "You know what? I got a degree in something that I felt strongly about, went into the field, and then 14 years into it, I felt like, yeah, not quite it. I'm going to go into law." And it was so vastly different. So be it. So I think what you said makes a lot of sense is don't rush into it, try different things. What's the big deal? Um, and you have to, and especially I would imagine the field you are in, you're impacting people's lives. Is it, this is a career. So when you do get into this field, make sure that is really what you want to do. Do you
Yeah,
have any
it's hard for me to imagine a young lawyer thinking they wanted to do family law without recognizing. I guess it could happen, but I think there just has to be some recognition just about how human it is relative to other areas of practice. So, in my experience, the younger lawyers who choose to pursue it, they do know what they're getting themselves into. They may end up being surprised in certain ways, but mostly they come in with, I think, the right intentions.
on a last note, what is your pet peeve?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you the first thing that leapt to mind that I hesitated to say because it sounds obnoxious, but I can't come up with anything else, is stupidity. I just really can't stand it when people are stupid. And that, I know that's got a broad definition, but we'll leave it at that because I guess everybody could have their own definition of what's dumb. But really stupid behavior is really annoying to me.
And we left the best for last. Why did we do that? I mean, we should have opened with that, but yeah, no, I'm with you. There's a definition. Everybody has their own definition of stupidity, and yes, that one is tough. I'd have to say that's up there for me too. So, Sarah, it's been a pleasure having you on the show and sharing your show, well, your story, and then also the way you are looking at where you are in the world. And this has been really enlightening. I really enjoyed it, and definitely will have you back. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And to our viewers and listeners, to find out more about Sarah Hechtman and how to get hold of her, click on her bio link below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on YouTube channel, Beyond the Bar Podcast, and follow us on all social media channels. And until next time, stay curious and stay inspired.